Throughout the 1990s, Acclaim Entertainment had a full Nelson on the World Wrestling Federation's video games. They held the exclusive publishing rights to any of the made-for-home consoles, as well as Nintendo's original handheld, the Game Boy. In total, they released 14 games between 1989 and 1999, and many of them are considered to be some of the laziest, poorly aged, and joyless in the genre. Their initial game was WWF WrestleMania, developed by Rare, released a few short months before the Mega Powers exploded at WrestleMania 5. The game was made to boost interest in the event. The title screen uses the "Bigger, Better, Badder" tagline that was used for WrestleMania 3. The game only has 6 wrestlers in it: Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, Honky Tonk Man, and Bam Bam Bigelow. It feels more like a fighting game than a wrestling one. Combat consists of mainly punches and kicks, with the odd running or diving attack. Taking damage causes a wrestler to turn red, meaning they're angry, and will do more damage themselves. Occasionally, pickups will slide across the top of the ring, unique to each wrestler, that will replenish their health. DiBiase has dollar symbols, Hogan has crucifixes, Macho Man has sunglasses, Andre has large feet, Bam Bam has fireballs, and Honkies are guitars. The wrestlers barely look like their real-life counterparts. They waddle around the ring like toddlers in a crib. The game has some charm to it, seeing as it is one of the earliest in the pro wrestling genre, but its hollow and button-mashing gameplay ensures it has little to no replayability. Rare followed up WWF WrestleMania with WrestleMania Challenge in 1990. The game's original title was going to be Survivor Series, which I think would have been a lot cooler and makes more sense seeing as a 3 versus 3 Survivor Series match had been added. There were 9 superstars in this one: Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, Brutus Beefcake, Rick Rude, Jim Duggan, and a generic wrestler named Yourself. Playing as them puts you in a championship mode that has you beat every other wrestler in the game to win. The gameplay is much better than in WrestleMania, but still nothing to sneeze at. I do like the 3D isometric view of the ring and how the wrestlers' health meters are located on the bottom 2 aprons, though the camera can hide this information from the player, which is annoying. The wrestler sprites are smaller than in WrestleMania, but the animations are definitely superior. The action is faster paced, and you can actually do wrestling moves like scoop slams, atomic drops, gorilla presses, and backdrops. If you're next to the ropes, you can also throw your opponent out of the ring and a 10 count will commence, though I could never achieve a count out and wonder if it's even possible. The third WWF game published by Acclaim was Steel Cage Challenge, in late 1992, developed by Sculptured Software under the LJN banner. This one is easily the worst of all the WWF games on NES. I'd argue it's one of the worst ever made. The gameplay is limited to strikes, headbutts, body slams, and a tossing move. The controls are clunky and utter shit. Matches take forever because everything feels like it's in slow motion. The only thing it has going for it is the introduction of the steel cage match. To win, your wrestler has to awkwardly climb the side of the cage, and then they just stop when they get to the top and the bell rings. The roster of 10 includes Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ted DiBiase, and new faces like Bret Hart, IRS, Jake Roberts, Roddy Piper, Sid Justice, Undertaker, and the Mountie, in what I'm pretty sure was his one and only video game appearance. The last WWF game of the NES era was King of the Ring, developed by Grey Matter Inc. and released in 1993. This one was the most ambitious of them all from a graphical perspective and really pushed the console to its absolute limits. It's restricted by the small movesets you have at your disposal, but I found the controls in the game to be fairly responsive. As the game's name suggests, the King of the Ring tournament was implemented as its own separate mode. The roster totals 11, the most in any of these NES games. You've got Hogan, Savage, Hart, Taker, Bam Bam, Razor Ramon, Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect, Lex Luger, and another generic U character that can have his name and stats adjusted and looks like it was meant to be Tatanka in diarrhea-colored trunks. Shawn Michaels also looks like a sloth on his selection screen. Entering the fourth console generation, the World Wrestling Federation's games took an even bigger stride in regards to their overall presentation. Between the years of 1992 and 1994, Sculptured Software would develop 4 games for the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and the Genesis ill-fated CD-ROM accessory, the Sega CD. The games were Super WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, Rage in the Cage, and Raw, and they're the main events of my video review today. All 4 of the games are virtually identical when looking at their Nintendo and Sega ports, minus Rage in the Cage, which was made only for the Sega CD, but used the exact same game engine as the others. The only real differences between the console versions were exclusive superstars in Super WrestleMania and Royal Rumble. The Super Nintendo and Genesis had varying sound capabilities and color palettes available with their games, but that kind of thing is a nitpick and comes down to personal preference. Neither changes what the games are at their core or how they play. For simplicity's sake, most of the footage I'm going to be using in this video will be from the Sega versions of the games. I want to maintain some level of consistency as we move through each installment, and those are the copies of the games I actually own in my collection and are the most familiar with. Regarding the first entry in the series, Super WrestleMania, the Genesis version is clearly superior for the simple fact that it includes finishing moves. A wrestling game without them lacks a ton of personality. So here we go with Super WrestleMania from 1992. Looking at it, its visuals are very dated and its gameplay limited, but you have to understand how much of an improvement this was over all previous WWF games. At the time of its release, it was a pretty big deal. Matches in Super WrestleMania involve you depleting your opponent's health meter to obtain a pinfall. The health meters are very stock-looking, with solid red, surrounded by a white border, though the next entries would give them a bit more color. Movesets are basic. You can punch with the C button and kick with the B button, and when your opponent is on the mat, you use these to perform stomps and elbow drops. When you initiate a grapple, an invisible tug-of-war minigame occurs that has you mash buttons faster than your opponent to achieve dominance over them to deliver one of several move options. The wrestler leaning forward during the tie-up is the one in control. Moves include a headbutt by pressing A, a body slam with B, a vertical suplex with B and C alone will perform an Irish whip. If your wrestler has his back against the ropes, doing an Irish whip will toss your opponent out of the ring. When your opponent is on the rebound, pressing the various attack buttons will have your wrestler land hip tosses, drop kicks, or clotheslines on them. In Super WrestleMania, finishers can be performed at any time by pressing A and C. You can't spam them though. I tried. It seems that you have to do a few other moves in between to recharge them. When knocked down, you can use the directional buttons to roll out of the way of your opponent's attacks. Entering and exiting the ring is done by simply holding the direction towards the ropes. Countouts are set to 10 seconds for each wrestler, and can happen really fast if you aren't careful. It's a pain that you can't enter the ring from the bottom, only the two sides, and being dropped down there for even a few short seconds will seal your fate. Super WrestleMania has 3 difficulties: easy, medium, and hard. Even on easy, I find the AI to be challenging. Playing on hard would be unnecessary, and just shorten your controller's lifespan with the amount of button mashing required in this game. Super WrestleMania offers single and 2-player modes. You have one-on-one matches, tag teams, and the most enjoyable, 4 versus 4 Survivor Series. Each competitor that gets eliminated walks out of the arena and is replaced with another. The WWF Championship mode, which is something else not featured in the Nintendo version, has you choose a superstar, and then, you guessed it, battle every other one in the game to win the World Wrestling Federation title. The roster totals 8 and includes the Ultimate Warrior before his first departure from the company, Hulk Hogan, Ted DiBiase, Shawn Michaels, making his wrestling game debut, Randy Savage, British Bulldog, IRS, and Papa Shango. The Super Nintendo exclusive superstars were Undertaker, Sid Justice, Jake Roberts, The Natural Disasters, and the Legion of Doom. The only wrestlers that were in both games were Hogan, Savage, and DiBiase. When hovering over any of the selectable superstars, you get to listen to decent renditions of their theme music. Before matches, there are no entrances, but you do get ring introductions made by Howard Finkel in the form of speech bubbles. The victory screen also has Finkel announce the winner. Super WrestleMania definitely looks the roughest out of all of the 16-bit Acclaim games. The crowd has 0 movement to them. Everything else looks fine, despite being a little bland. The ring has red, white, and blue ropes, along with blue turnbuckle posts and aprons. The mat has a yellow WWF logo in the center of it, and there are smaller ones located on the turnbuckle pads and along the visible ring apron. Outside the ring, there are light blue mats and guardrails, not much to say. Bobby Heenan and Vince McMahon are seen calling the action behind the announcer's table, and as mentioned in my review of WCW Super Brawl, all the World Wrestling Federation games from this generation also had a referee that would walk around and count pinfalls and countouts. They would disappear from wrestling games for years and not return in physical form, well into the era of 3D. Being the first pro wrestling game released by Sculptured Software on this newer hardware, it goes without saying that Super WrestleMania is the worst of them all. I don't think it has much replay value, and none of these games have much of it to begin with. The controls in this one feel very sluggish, and the gameplay a lot slower than it would be in its successors. Graphically, it's the least impressive as well. The Survivor Series match can be fun, and is the game's strongest aspect, but becomes arduous due to the endless button mashing and limited movesets. Moving on to Royal Rumble from 1993, there's such a huge improvement over the last game in terms of presentation. You've got an animated crowd during matches, along with the commentary team, Heenan and McMahon. All of the colors pop a lot more. The health meters are blue as well as red. Wrestler sprites are more detailed, though a few could have used slightly more accurate ring gear. The crash mats outside the ring are gone, leaving only the concrete, ouch, but there are blue ring steps visible around the top 2 corners of the ring. Sadly, we don't have the pre-match introductions by Howard Finkel, but we do get matchup and victory screens made to look like articles in a newspaper or the old WWF magazine. The wrestler selection screen has been overhauled. You've got a wallpaper with the Fed's logo scrolling past. I like that you can see stats on each wrestler, listen to their entrance music, and it even tells you what their finishing move is. The roster includes 12 superstars, with 7 of them found in both the Nintendo and Sega versions. Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Randy Savage, Crush, and Lex Luger in his narcissist gimmick. The 5 wrestlers exclusive to the Genesis port are IRS, Jim Duggan, Rick Martel, Papa Shango, and Hulk Hogan in what would be his final appearance before he jumped ship to WCW. Super Nintendo owners would get Mr. Perfect, Ted DiBiase, Yokozuna, Tatanka, and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. The gameplay has been expanded from Super WrestleMania. There are better move animations and more of them to choose from, making Royal Rumble infinitely more enjoyable. Pressing different combinations of A, B, and C from the tie-up allows you to do an atomic drop and backbreaker on top of all of the moves featured in the last game. You can also do knee drops and body splashes to grounded opponents in addition to elbow drops and stomps. These added moves don't sound like much when said aloud, but trust me, they do wonders during gameplay. Finishers return by pressing A and B, but now can only be hit when your opponent's health is in the red zone. The finishers for wrestlers that were in Super WrestleMania have been improved, like Macho Man's elbow drop. It was awkward as fuck in the last game. Some finishers are performed from the top rope, others next to your opponent's legs or from behind them, and a few in front by mashing buttons and winning the tie-up minigame. Royal Rumble's greatest inclusion is having the previously invisible tug-of-war meter show itself on screen. It makes fighting for control a lot easier and more fun, especially when playing these games with a second player. Matches have marginally more strategy to them and, without sounding too pretentious, can tell a better story. The main thing is being able to knock down the ref and perform illegal attacks like eye rakes and chokes. You can exit from the bottom of the ring now, and leaned up against the apron is a blue chair you can pick up and smack your opponent with. You can't bring it into the ring with you, and after one strike it's gone, but I like that the chair bends after using it and falls onto the ground. There are a few new match types in Royal Rumble. The Brawl modifier makes it so that a match can only end when your opponent's health is depleted. There are no rules either, so eye rakes and chokes can be used at any time. Tournament replaces Championship mode from the previous game, where you have to fight every other wrestler in the game to win. Both singles matches and tag teams can be contested under the Brawl and Tournament options, and you can also play a tournament cooperatively with a second player. Triple tag team is 3 versus 3. You can only see one of your partners standing on the apron at a time, and you have to press a button to cycle between them if you want to tag one or the other in. This match replaces the 4-on-4 Survivor Series match from Super WrestleMania. The most exciting new match type is the Royal Rumble, though. It's a lot of fun. It begins with 2 wrestlers and grows to a maximum of 6 in the ring at once. You toss your opponents out of the ring with Irish whips, hip tosses, or by knocking them off the top turnbuckle when their health is low enough. Once all 12 wrestlers in the game have entered and 11 of them are eliminated, the match ends. The next game would be a spin-off released exclusively for the Sega CD in late 1993, WWF Rage in the Cage. If you're wondering if Sculptured Software took full advantage of the storage space and sound capabilities of the Sega CD to boost this game's visuals and music quality, the answer is a resounding fuck no. It's the laziest of all the games I've looked at today. It doesn't push any boundaries. Despite being on more advanced hardware, it strips away some of the elements found in the last game, like the ability to pick up a chair outside the ring, and the removal of tag team and Royal Rumble matches, leaving only one-on-one options. It's such a huge step backwards for the genre, a lot of wasted potential all around. Gameplay-wise, Rage in the Cage is the exact same as Royal Rumble, so there's no point in me recapping it all again here. The developers didn't add in any more moves, animations, or mechanics. The only reason to play this game would be the novelty of the steel cage match, which admittingly was the best incarnation of it up to that point, but saying that means very little. The cage doesn't add a whole lot to the proceedings. If you do a suplex or body slam near the side of it, the wrestlers will tumble to the mat due to their lack of ring awareness. But that very same thing happens in Royal Rumble if you are ever near the ropes. The only difference here is that there's a rattling noise. Same when you Irish whip your opponent. Rather than tumble out of the ring, they just fold up against the cage. To win the match, you have to weaken your opponent and escape by holding the same buttons you would press to perform a finisher as you climb to the top turnbuckle, and your wrestler will go over the cage wall instead. Cage matches can last minutes in this game, or mere seconds. Despite their simplicity, I do find them relatively entertaining. These older cages that had the big square gaps in them were always superior to the chain link ones of today. You could see the action a lot better, and the wrestlers could do so much more with them. It sucks that the cage match is restricted to this Sega CD game though, and didn't make its way over to the base consoles. Rage in the Cage didn't live up to its full potential. The reason it felt so barren compared to the other 3 games in the series is because it implemented full motion video, which took up most of the space on the CD-ROM. Even at the time of the game's release, none of these short clips it used were all that impressive. It makes you wonder why they even bothered with them. Not only do you get to see an FMV of a particular wrestler when you win tournament mode with them, but you can also view their signature move from the selection screen, and hilariously, they are all done to jobbers. I guess the WWF didn't want their actual talent to look weak, even in a video game. On top of the shitty FMVs taking up a lot of space, there are also unnecessary vocalized introductions by Howard Finkel and verbal taunts from the wrestlers before matches, similar to what would be found in Acclaim's early 3D games. The roster in Rage in the Cage totals 20 and feels extremely bloated. The wrestlers aren't in alphabetical order either, so slowly scrolling through them to find who you want to be is utterly atrocious. You've got Randy Savage, IRS, Razor Ramon, Ted DiBiase, Lex Luger, still in his narcissist gimmick, Bam Bam Bigelow, Yokozuna, Shawn Michaels, Rick Martel, Big Boss Man, Tatanka, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Crush, Mr. Perfect, Kamala, who wasn't in many games. This would be his last, until 2009's Legends of WrestleMania. And oddly, despite throwing tag matches to the curb, Rage in the Cage features several tag teams, the aforementioned Money Incorporated, but also the Head Shrinkers, Samu and Fatu, as well as the Nasty Boys, Jerry Sags and Brian Knobbs. Rage in the Cage has a few novelties, but mostly it just feels like a waste. Its graphics and mechanics aren't an improvement over what had come before. Its music didn't take full advantage of the CD's capabilities. Nothing it does really justifies its existence. It's also the hardest game to play out of the bunch, because unless you own a Genesis and its Sega CD attachment, you're gonna have to emulate it. Last, but certainly not least, we have made it to the final World Wrestling Federation game released during the 16-bit generation, Raw, from 1994. It's considered the strongest of Sculptured Software's games of the era, and it makes total sense. Playing it, I noticed a clear improvement in opponent AI. More moves have been added, like a DDT, fall-away slam, and multiple suplex variations. There's a bit more strategy to matches because each wrestler has their own unique stats with different strength, speed, and stamina levels. Every wrestler has been given their own moveset on top of having their own distinct finisher. This is both a benefit and detriment to the gameplay. Of course, having their own set of moves means every wrestler plays differently. However, not every wrestler has moves assigned to every possible button input, which not only makes their movesets feel smaller, or just as small as they were in Royal Rumble, but also forces you to experiment to find all the moves mid-match, which is never ideal. The best way I can describe it is if in a newer wrestling game, half of the button combinations you had at your disposal to do grapples were just left empty by the developers, and which directions not slotted with moves varied from wrestler to wrestler. Despite having universal controls, some of the inputs would do nothing and have your wrestler stand there. It would annoy the fuck out of you, wouldn't it? Well, that's what it's like playing several matches back-to-back in Raw. Save yourself the headache and find a move list online. I like that the submission finishers will actually cause your opponent to give up if their health meter is completely drained. If you whip your opponent into one of the corners on the top side of the ring, you can perform a satisfying 10-punch on them. In addition to the steel chair, you also have a mop bucket you can use outside the ring. Now the weapons have 2 different attack animations, including a jab. Using the jab won't destroy the weapon, so you can utilize it an infinite amount of times. When weapons do break, fret not, as they can respawn. Another new feature in Raw are the over-the-top mega moves that are performed by entering specific button combinations for each wrestler when in position. Some of them are a lot trickier than others to execute. Honestly, I've always found them too tacky and lame. I rarely use them when playing this game. I don't think having them in it was necessary, but it is what it is. Match-wise, Raw brings back the 4 vs. 4 Survivor Series match that had been absent since Super WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble plays the exact same, only now if you get thrown out, you will take control of the next wrestler entering, given there is another. Also, if you hit your mega move in a Rumble, it will almost always guarantee an elimination. The new Bedlam match is essentially a tornado tag with elimination rules. The Raw Endurance match has you face off against 6 opponents with your own team of up to 6. If you want, you can make it 1 vs. 6 and turn it into a handicap. So yeah, there's a lot more to do here in Raw. It's easily the most replayable out of all these 16-bit games. The presentation in Raw has been tweaked a bit since Royal Rumble, seeing as it was named after the Fed's weekly show that had just premiered the previous year. Matches take place at those TV tapings. The ring has a red apron with the original Raw logo spread across it. The ring steps are also colored red to match the aesthetic. Blue crash mats return. The steel chair is now yellow. Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon are on commentary, and we get a pre-match image of them sitting at the announcer's desk. They've got their notes with them and monitors to call the action. Post-match, we see the winning wrestler's logo and a picture of them that pans from left to right. I think it's supposed to be that multi-screen setup they had near the entranceway around that time. I guess I should go through the roster in this game. This is New Generation Cheese at its finest. 1, 2, 3 Kid, Bam Bam Bigelow, Doink the Clown, Diesel, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, the All-American Lex Luger, Shawn Michaels, Owen Hart, Yokozuna, The Undertaker, and the most noteworthy is Luna Vachon, the only female wrestler in the game and the very first in any wrestling game released in North America. There were a couple of exclusives, but none for the primary home consoles. Randy Savage and Crush were in the shittier Game Gear version, and Quang was an unlockable for the 32X. All of the 16-bit wrestling games published by Acclaim in the early 90s are flawed, and you'd be an idiot if you said they match the standards of the wrestling games of today. But like all of the titles found in this genre, they have a level of charm to them, give you that sweet, sweet sense of nostalgia, and are time capsules embodying an era of professional wrestling no longer with us. Do I absolutely love these games? Nah. But I can still find it in myself to play them from time to time out of curiosity or for a laugh. Being able to revisit games this old in any capacity is something that should be noted. They can't be all bad if they have you dust them off and turn on that power button. I want to thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you found it insightful and were entertained by it in some way. If you'd like to show your support to the channel and ensure more videos like these can be made, think about subscribing, hit that bell icon for notifications, and become a producer over on Patreon if you can. I will see you all in the next one. Take care of yourselves and always stay nerdy.